Emergency edition of the Patriots Beat podcast, live edition. Alex Barth, Evan Lazar here as always. And Alex, we got a big day of trades and shakeups in the NFL draft order. The San Francisco 49ers have traded with the Miami Dolphins to move up to number 3 in the NFL draft. Dolphins went down to 12 for a hot minute. Then they traded back up to number 6 with the Philadelphia Eagles. So just resetting the stage now, the top of the draft, we have the Jaguars at 1. Obviously, the Jets at 2, and now the San Francisco 49ers at 3. Miami will now pick 6, and Philadelphia will now pick 12. So a lot of moving and shaking going on. These are always fun when they make these trades before the draft even starts and weeks before. It's not
super rare.
Super rare, but also there are some precedent. The Rams did it with Jared Goff. I think the Eagles that year did the same thing with the Carson Wentz deal. So there has been some precedent for it in the past. But I think the main questions that we have to ask here first are, let's start with the Jimmy Garoppolo discussion, because I think that from a Patriots perspective, then we can get into some of the trades and what the trade evaluation actually is in terms of if the Patriots would give up that much in a trade to get something back like the number 3 pick like San Francisco did. But with Jimmy G first, I think both you and I, and correct me if I'm wrong, are already on the record multiple times that this is not our number one choice here.
I wanted Jacoby over Jimmy. It's just an objective. I mean, that was my big one.
Exactly. Like, this is not something that we are advocating for the Patriots to do necessarily, but the facts are what the facts are. We know Bill Belichick's relationship with Jimmy Garoppolo was a good one. We know that the Patriots are very high on Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback back before they traded him to San Francisco in the first place. A lot has happened since then. A lot of injuries on Jimmy's side has happened since then. I think the biggest thing with Garoppolo outside of the injuries is that the Patriots are going to have to do something with his contract. He's got a $25 million cap hit for the team that acquires him via trade. The Patriots only have a shade under $12 million in cap space, according to Miguel Benzon, Pat's cap. So the Patriots right now, as things stand, can't fit Jimmy Garoppolo under the cap if they acquire him via trade. So he's going to have to rework his deal in order to lower that cap number for a team acquiring him, so to make him more tradable. So in a lot of ways, I feel like that's the next domino that could fall here for Jimmy's perspective. I think it's obvious why Jimmy might want out of San Francisco. I'd also heard that he has sort of distanced himself a little bit from the organization. Every single year they do a thing down in this year was supposed to be in Nashville, where the receivers, similar to what the Patriots are doing out west in California right now, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, all those guys get together for a passing camp, and Jimmy isn't supposed to attend this year because of reasons that he doesn't feel like the organization is really committed to him. He doesn't really feel like he's their guy, and I think that's pretty obvious that he's not their guy at this point. So first questions first, does this put the Jimmy G thing even more on our radar? Are we even more of the belief now that the Patriots could acquire Jimmy G via trade to bring him back to New England?
I think it absolutely puts him on the radar. However that happens, we'll see. But and now you have the reports, a couple people saying that San Francisco did this. They moved up to 3 to get Mac Jones because they want the most NFL-ready quarterback. And they'll pass on Trey Lance and they'll pass on Justin Fields on that upside. They have a roster they like. They want a conductor. At that point, I don't know why you don't just stick with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Jimmy Garoppolo right now and Mac Jones right now are pretty close. But they made the move, and here we are. Garoppolo is going to have to restructure his contract. That's a big hurdle. And then does San Francisco just release him? There's not a ton of dead money. Does San Francisco just let him go? And then I think you're really looking at a scenario where New England's likely. The trade, obviously, they'll have to compete. I don't know who else wants him. He has a no-trade clause in there. So that could go a couple of different ways. But, and we'll get into it in a little bit. The options, right, because they're going to add somebody, right? We've known this. Cam and Stidham aren't going to be the only 2 guys. There's going to be somebody else. The options for them to trade up right now are slim to none.
Correct.
Brian Flores, with these 2 trades Miami did, basically choked out any opportunity the Patriots had unless they want to get bananas aggressive. So, yeah, I think you have to look at Jimmy Garoppolo now as being the plan, because if you look beyond the trades, you look beyond Garoppolo, there's not a ton of other opportunities out there for them.
Exactly. That's the way that I'm looking at it as well. And I find it really hard to believe. So San Francisco is saying right now through Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter, and this could just be bartering to kind of get a some more trade.
Not could. It is. It is.
Yeah, in Garoppolo. And that's kind of what I had heard is that the Niners, I reported a couple weeks ago, the Patriots had called the 49ers asking about Jimmy Garoppolo. They had said that they are not moving Jimmy G. They're kind of steadfast on that. The behind the scenes read between the lines take was that they weren't going to move Jimmy G until they had a better option in hand to make that trade happen. Now, Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter are saying that the Niners are planning on keeping Jimmy G as sort of the bridge quarterback to next year because they have a guy in mind in the draft and they don't want to throw that guy right into the fire. All that's all well and good, but you have a $25 million bridge quarterback. I mean, that's not the idea, right? That's not usually the typical bridge. The bridge is Cam Newton on a 1-year contract at $5 million. That's a bridge, right? Not a Jimmy G bridge at $25 million. So from the 49ers perspective, I don't really understand why they would say that Jimmy G is this bridge guy that they want to hang on to. So maybe they just haven't gotten a trade offer that's made it worth their while yet to move Jimmy G. So that sort of brings into the question, what is Jimmy G worth? And would you do it if you were the Patriots? I would say somewhere around a 3rd or a 4th round pick when you factor into the contract as well, maybe even lower. And maybe the Niners just don't feel like that's worth it. You know, the asset coming in is not worth just getting anything back for Garoppolo. I don't know. It's a lot of sort of interesting conversations to have, but I think that there's a lot to be said for Jimmy G's style of play in the Patriots offense. The quick release, the sound throwing mechanics for the most part, very accurate within 15, 20 yards of the line of scrimmage. We all know he's got limited upside. He's got limited playmaking ability outside the pocket, limited downfield throwing, but that's not necessarily what the Patriots need to be, right? They need somebody that's going to throw accurately, quickly, on-time passes, and that's certainly things that Jimmy G has always been able to do when healthy. So you can understand from the Patriots' perspective why they would want Jimmy G back. And like you said, looking at this trade now by the 49ers to move up to number 3, the San Francisco traded the number 12 pick in this year's draft, 2 future first-round picks, and a 3rd-round pick in 2022 to move up from 12 to 3. So you got to think that if the Patriots want to move up from 15 to, let's say, 4 with Atlanta, because that seems to be the next sort of shoe to drop, it's going to take something similar to that haul. And we got a lot of comments on our mock draft last night, Alex, saying that we gave up too much to move up to number 6 last night, or 7, whatever it was. The Niners just gave up even more to move up to number 3 in real life. So the Patriots are going to have to end up giving up really what ends up being 3 first-round picks and probably another day 2 pick to move up from 15 to 4. That is a massive, massive haul if that's something that they're entertaining.
And even if that's the case, if you're the Patriots, you don't necessarily get to pick your quarterback in that spot, right? If we assume Lawrence and what was that?
That's a good point too. I said
right. If we're assuming Lawrence and Lance go 1 and 2, you know, San Francisco is going to take somebody at 3. Let's say the Patriots only think Fields is worth moving up for. He's the only one that's worth moving up for. If he goes off the board at 3, then what are you doing?
Right.
Then there goes that. So there's just a lot less, you know, a lot less of a chance to get the guy you want up there. And I see some people talking about, one, why can't they trade up for 4 with Atlanta? I see people saying Atlanta won't trade within the division. I don't buy that. No. I think if Carolina comes with a Godfather offer, Atlanta's gonna move down and say, you know what, fine, give us all your future picks, develop a quarterback, because if they screw up, right, and that quarterback doesn't turn into anything, you're golden if you're the Atlanta Falcons. Cincinnati, maybe it's a little easier to move up there at 5, but I just think that they're going to be, I think they're locked in on Penny Sewell. I think that's the pick. They're not going to move down to 15. Maybe if you had, 7 or 8, you could make that happen, but I'm not sure. And then, if you talk about after them, you're not getting 6 from Miami, 7 or 8. Now, all of a sudden, it's basically Mac Jones. That's where you're trading up to get Mac Jones. I see people saying, why can't they get Mac Jones at 15? Let me go through the order here, right? So you have 3 quarterbacks going in the top 3. We all agree on that.
Correct.
Let's just say for sake of argument, so we know it's going to be Wilson and Lawrence, and then let's just say it's I don't know, pick one.
Wilson, Trey Lance.
Trey Lance. Okay. So Wilson, Lawrence, and Lance go 3. So that leaves you with Fields, and that leaves you with Jones. Those 2 guys have to get through Atlanta, Cincinnati, Miami, Detroit, Carolina, Denver, Dallas, the Giants, the Eagles, the Chargers, and Minnesota. I would say at least half of those teams are 50-50 on a quarterback. That's before anybody trades up. There's no shot those two quarterbacks fall all the way to 15. If we're talking about taking the best quarterback on the board at 15 at this point, Evan, it's Kyle Trask.
Or you're Kellen Mond. Yeah, it's going to end up being one of those.
It's Kyle Trask, but that's another discussion.
Depending on your preference there. That's the thing is that now if they end up just staying put at 15 because the trade isn't there, it's not going to be a quarterback. They're not going to take Kyle Trask at 15 or Kellen Mond at 15. But I think the biggest thing that I want to reiterate is what you actually said, is that now it feels like the Patriots are not going to have, even if they do trade up, they're not going to have their pick of the quarterback, right? So they're going to have to read the tea leaves and understand what the other teams are going. So there was a report that Rappaport threw out there, and then he quickly kind of rephrased it, but he said the original tweet was what he actually meant to say. The Jets are taking Zach Wilson at number 2. That's what's going to end up happening. The Niners were hoping to trade up to number 2 to get Zach Wilson. The Jets want to take him there, so that's why they ended up going and calling Miami at number 3, and they're going to take Miami as offer up on it, and they're going to take whoever's left, right? Whoever their pick of the next guys are. So the Patriots, if they trade up to number 4, are at the mercy of those first 3 teams. So you're kind of stuck with whoever is the league is sort of grading at as the worst prospect of the top 4 guys.
And if you're going to, it's going to cost, just because you don't have the choice at that pick doesn't mean it's going to come any cheaper. That's going to be 5 picks between the first and second round. That's probably going to take. You're probably looking at 2 firsts and 3 seconds, I think, to move up to that pick at least. And that's before you get other competition of Carolina trying to trade up, of Denver trying to trade up. This was always going to happen, right? There was always going to be a crunch. The idea of San Francisco getting their guy at 12 or whatever, somebody was always going to jump. San Francisco just did it first, and it's going to create this sort of panic here. They probably overpaid a little bit too in the moment. If they get a good quarterback, it's not an overpayment, but they probably overpaid a little bit in the moment. So it's just going to create this crunch here, and it's going to get really tough. I will say, because I will add this. Now is the time we start talking about the 2022 quarterback class.
Yeah.
Now is the time we start looking towards that, because is there a guy you think you can get in that class that, maybe is worth kind of, you can trade this first round pick up a future first next year, and then all of a sudden you have ammo. If you really like Sam Howell, if you really like Spencer Rattler, if you really like I do, Phil Dracovic,
Desmond Ryder.
Does that become
Desmond Ryder? That's
another guy. Yeah. Does that become the plan now of, well, we had this, if you had the 15th pick earmarked for a quarterback, you can still technically do that. That quarterback's just not coming this year. And then you add into the fold Garoppolo on the 1-year deal, and it all starts to kind of come together.
So the thing is that a lot of people in the chat, and I agree that some of these quarterbacks are worth it, right? Just if it comes down to it, and the Patriots can trade up to 4 or 5 to get the 4th quarterback in that list, right? And it ends up being Justin Fields, they could do a whole lot worse. But the problem is, and it doesn't always go in order, right? This doesn't always work out that the league gets it 100% right. The problem is that out of those 4 guys, realistically, only 1 or 2 of them are actually going to work out in the league, right? So you're getting the prospect that people feel is the worst guy out of the group, and more or less you're probably going to, get a guy that's got a lower chance of succeeding. Now, Justin Fields is a really interesting player. I think that we're starting to think he might actually be the 4th guy off the board because of some issues with progression speed, things that I wrote about in my film breakdown in terms of his mental process, his ability to get the ball out quickly, the Ohio State offense, the history of Ohio State quarterbacks, I think pays into it just a little bit as well. So there's a lot of factors here with Justin Fields, who has more experience maybe a little bit than Trey Lance, and has played at a much higher level of football than Trey Lance did. But Trey Lance's tape, granted at the FCS level, is significantly better than Justin Fields' tape was last year. That's just from an objective standpoint, that's just a fact. So I think that's going to be a lot of the factors here, is that who's going to end up being that guy. That I think is going to set the trade market just a little bit. And I want to reiterate that the trade.
So let me just add this too. When we talk about, who they're going to add in all of this, it's Garoppolo or a rookie at this point. It's not both, because you only have so many spots on the roster. Cam is going to make the team.
Yeah.
Stidham's probably going to make the team. I find it hard to believe, just given his experience. I think Stidham makes the team. Are you going to carry 4 quarterbacks? Because then if you're adding Garoppolo and you're drafting somebody, unless you know, a 7th round guy you think you can stash on the practice squad.
Yeah, no, if they trade for Jimmy, that's their quarterback room.
Although I will say, actually, as I kind of make this point, let me just double check this here. I think Bill Belichick has carried 4 quarterbacks before.
He did. So back
he did in 2000, right?
2000, he carried 4 to keep Brady on the team. A lot of people didn't want that to happen. He obviously understood all of it and was able to keep Brady in the mix. So I want to reiterate, because there was 2 trades today, so I do get that it's confusing of what was given up where. The 49ers traded to Miami, and I'm reading this directly off of Adam Schefter's Twitter page, the number 12 pick, a 2021 3rd-round pick, and then a first-round pick in 2022 and 2023. So it's 2 future first-round picks. The other trade that happened, though, I think is even more interesting from a Patriot perspective, because this is maybe where we thought the Patriots would need to trade up into to get one of these quarterbacks. Right. We talked about it last night. We traded up to number 7, right, to get that quarterback. And the trade that the Eagles and the Dolphins pulled off for the Dolphins to move back up to 6, that's a trade that I think that we should talk about a little bit too, because I think that's a great barometer of where the Patriots might need to give up to go from 15 to 7. Let's say if somebody like Mac Jones or Trey Lance is still on the board, and that's a guy that they feel really good about, they don't want to get leapfrogged again. So that trade was the number 12 pick, a 2022 first-round pick, and then the teams also swapped the 3rd-round picks, 156 for 123. So a much smaller trade than what San Francisco gave up, certainly.
That one turned out to be very affordable, but you also wonder, the ammo was a little bit better going in. So, look, if the Patriots could have given that up to get 6, that would have been fantastic. But I just, San Francisco kind of jumped the gun and Miami took advantage, and those are just 2 teams. You rarely see picks get moved before the draft like this. All the information isn't in, right? Guys still have pro days going on and all of that.
Well, the other thing that it tells you, too, is that the Eagles and the Dolphins know that they're not taking quarterbacks this year.
Right.
So those picks are being switched and the price isn't as high because of the fact that they know that a quarterback isn't tagged to that pick.
I would say I've seen some people point out that, Miami's not taking a quarterback. Maybe you can get back up to 6. That to me is off the table because, first of all, if that was Miami's plan, they would have just stayed at 12. Second of all, they clearly, I think they know they're going to get one of Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith. They know they're going to get one of those guys. Yeah. You're not guaranteed one of those guys at 12. I doubt either of those guys are there at 12. You're guaranteed one of those guys at 6. And I have to believe that's the plan. And that's why Miami moved back up to 6 so they can get whichever I don't know which one, whichever pass catcher it is. Maybe they're fine with all of them and they're okay letting another team decide for them. But I don't think 6, I think that unless it's 4, I think Atlanta might hold on to 4. I do, because if they're going to go for it and give it one last run with Matt Ryan, I don't know why I said his full name. They're going to get a really, really good, whether it's Patrick Surtain or one of those pass catchers, they're going to get a really good player at 4. So I'm looking at it now, and it starts at 7. It all starts at 7 with the Detroit Lions, who also, by the way, might be in on a quarterback.
I don't think the Lions are taking a quarterback.
Maybe Goff is the bridge, and you don't think so?
They purposely included Goff in that trade. They wanted Goff in that trade.
But maybe as a bridge. Maybe.
I don't know. I don't think that they're going quarterback, but I do think it's really interesting with Atlanta at 4. They're probably not going quarterback either, I don't think yet, just because they're kind of strapped to Matt Ryan for a little bit because of his contract and that situation. So maybe they're looking at more of the 2022, 2023 quarterback selection in the first round. So I think that they're a team that's going to be for sale, but I don't know if they're going to deal with the Patriots either. There's definitely still some salt about that Super Bowl and 28-3 and all that kind of stuff. I saw somebody bring that up in the chat. I do think there's some validity to that. The Bengals at 5, I think, is a really interesting spot because they are a team that still has several holes to fill. So maybe they do feel like they could add some more picks and continue to stack together players around Joe Burrow. They're certainly not going to take a quarterback. So maybe that's something that they could entertain. But the price has been set, right? And the question really is at this point, if you're the Patriots and you're contending with teams like Chicago, maybe Indy already traded for Carson Wentz, so they're probably set at quarterback. Washington,
Chicago, maybe. Denver, Washington, Carolina. That's probably the group.
Really the tough one, I think, out of all that group, because they have aggressively been pursuing quarterbacks all offseason long, right? They want Deshaun Watson. We don't know how that legal situation is going to shake out at this point, so who knows if anybody's going to touch Deshaun Watson.
Well, so it is interesting that the two top teams in the running for Watson essentially took themselves out of the running today.
Right.
And I think, at the very least, that means that this isn't going to get sorted out before the draft. So, but I will say this. So when you mentioned Carolina, and here's where that's interesting. If we're talking about the 7th pick as being what this all hinges on, Carolina only has to move up one spot.
Right.
So they are in the driver's seat right there. And then maybe you can get the Lions to trade out of 8 again. But yeah, it's going to be so tough for the Patriots to trade up right now.
Yeah, so we went over all the scenarios. We understand all the trades. I think the next step is I want to put some of these quarterbacks on the board for us, and let's hear our opinions on whether we think it's worth it or not to do it, right? So
yeah,
let's say the Patriots call up Atlanta at number 4. They offer a similar trade package to what San Francisco just got, number 3, 4. Do you do it for Trey Lance, yes or no?
I'm just going to go back to what I've said. I think if you believe the quarterback is the right guy, no price is too high. I think me and you both believe Trey Lance could succeed here. So yes, because again, the Chiefs overpaid to trade up to get Patrick Mahomes. Nobody talks about that being an overpayment anymore. If whoever San Francisco move up to took, if that guy goes on to win them a Super Bowl, he was totally worth that price. So yes, I believe Lance can be the guy. So I would trade up for Lance.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the reason why I'm so high on Trey Lance, I get this question a lot. Why do you like Trey Lance so much? Is that when I turn on the Trey Lance tape at NDSU, I see a quarterback that operates in a lot of different types of system schemes that the Patriots run. Things from under center, play action passing from under center, quick game passing when they spread the field, downfield passing concepts that mirror what the Patriots like to do. And then they also have that RPO option package in there with Trey Lance as well. That's very Cam Newton-like, right? So the Patriots have all these things already in their arsenal that they've been working on already. So I think that makes for a really nice transition. So I'm obviously a yes on Trey Lance. What about Justin Fields, though? Are you still yes on this?
No, I don't think Justin Fields is that guy. I've talked about my hesitation with Ohio State quarterbacks before. The injury concerns last year. I mean, he took some good shots and he didn't get up from a ton of them. I understand why the upside's there, but I think, Trey Lance, I don't know that you get a shot at a Trey Lance in another year. I think there'll be a Justin Fields, a guy with that prototype in another year.
I agree.
So I'm out on Trey. I am out on Justin Fields for that price. If you can move up to 7 for like the 2 firsts and a second for the deal that like that, then I'm in on it. I'm out on Fields at 4.
So I think Fields is going to be a good player in the league, but I think that you need to build that scheme differently for him to be able to work here, right? You're going to have to live with a vertical passing attack that has the quarterback hold the football for a little bit. And they do have the offensive line to do it. I'm not sure if they necessarily have the receivers that fit that type of offense, but they definitely have the offensive line to protect them. So maybe you can get away with it. But if you're going to be the Tom Brady, hit the top of the drop and the ball is out type of quarterback, or you get to the second read within 2.5 seconds, the ball is out of the guy's hands, don't draft Justin Fields, right? Because that's going to, maybe he gets to that point, but it's definitely going to take some time for him to get to that point. So if you're going to give up 3 first-round picks to make this trade up, just like the 49ers just did, I think you have to be more confident in the player that he's going to be able to fit what they are able to do, or you have to be really more confident in yourself that you can completely change the system and work around him. Maybe in that case, with Justin Fields, he sits behind Cam for the entire year, and they work in that system slowly, methodically, sort of with Cam, who is a little bit more of a vertical passer that holds onto the ball as well. So you could see certainly they could make that transition eventually, but you're basically burning the Tom Brady playbook, right? You're just saying that that's not going to be our offense anymore, and we're not going to be that type of efficient precision, short between the numbers passing game, throw it out and let's start all over again. If that's the way they want to go, then Justin Fields can be somebody that we can entertain. I am also a no in giving up the farm, so to speak, for a guy like Justin Fields for those reasons. The next one, though, what about Mac Jones, right? And where do you entertain that trade up? Because like we've been saying for the last 20 minutes, there is a picture that's being painted here of these quarterbacks flying off the board, first of all. And second of all, a lot of teams, I think, are going to feel like we need to get up there because we can't just hope that our guy is still going to be there, right? So right. I think that that's a big question too. Is number 7 too high for Mac Jones? Is number 9 with Denver making that trade too high for Mac Jones? I mean, where do we fall on that one now?
Yeah. So again, Mac Jones, like Justin Fields, I don't think he's as unique of a prospect. That doesn't mean he's any less good.
Right.
I just think that you'll have a shot at that guy. And, you're not giving up perhaps a generational talent. And the other thing is with Mac Jones, you're going to need more help. You're going to need more talent. You give up all those picks, right? I said this at the top of the show. I don't see a huge difference between where Mac Jones is right now and where Jimmy Garoppolo is right now.
I would be shocked if that's the guy that the Niners are targeting at number 3. I mean, just absolutely shocked. And
right, unless like if it was before free agency, maybe I'd believe it because then it's okay. You're taking Jimmy's money off the books to go make a massive to go spend a bunch on a free agent. That's off the table now. I just think if it's and I love Mac Jones, I do, but I think if it's between Mac Jones for 3 firsts or Jimmy Garoppolo for a day 3 pick, it's Garoppolo.
Yeah,
that has to be the choice there, and then you can dip back in maybe next year if it's not as competitive as a quarterback draft. That Mac Jones type of player, whoever that ends up being next year, gets to you in the 20s because most years that would be the case. You could get this guy at 15. You could probably trade down and get this guy still in the first round. So I just, with Garoppolo on the table, I'm not giving up a ton for Mac Jones. If it's maybe like just this year's first, if it's maybe like
the trade that the Dolphins and the
right.
Eagles just did, it's a little bit of a different conversation.
If it's something like that, honestly, if it's 15 and 46 for Mac Jones to move up to 7, I don't think that'll do it. But like if that's the deal, I would do it. I don't know if I'm dipping into future first. Maybe if it's 15, 46 in the next year second, then yeah, I'm starting to like it. I don't know that I'm dipping into a future first for Mac Jones, just the way everything's laid out right now.
So the biggest concern with Mac Jones is obviously upside, right? How much physical upside does he have? I think this notion that he has no upside, though, is kind of hogwash. Like, he definitely has some upside because
the other guys, it's just so much more is the problem.
Right. Because he's truly a really cerebral pocket passer, really smart pocket passer, understands ball placement down the field, can throw it to all 3 levels accurately with enough zip. I think he's still got a big enough arm to get the ball out there when he needs to. And he's this really quick processor of things. He's just got quick eyes. He's got that ability to see things quickly, get the ball out quickly. And as much as we fall in love with all these mobile quarterbacks, if you look at the history of the last 10 Super Bowls, 20 Super Bowls, most of the time the guy that wins the Super Bowl is a pocket passer. Now, 6 or 7 of them now are Tom Brady, right? So that kind of skews it. But even if we look at some of the other guys, outside of Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson, it's usually a guy that stands in the pocket and throws the ball that is in the Super Bowl conversations, right? So it's not, you don't need a mobile quarterback. I get it's more fun. I get that those guys bring a lot more to the offense, right? I understand all those types of things, but I do think that the notion of a pocket passer is getting a little bit lost here, right? I think that people are overreacting a little bit to the Russell Wilsons of the world. And then you also have somebody like Josh Allen who people think, oh, he's an athletic guy. He is, but the improvements from the pocket are why Josh Allen took that next step, right? It wasn't because he all of a sudden became, Lamar Jackson was running all over the place. He improved and became a borderline MVP last year because of his improvements throwing the football from inside the pocket. So I think that that's something that needs to still be talked about. The most important things with quarterback play still forever will be accuracy and decision-making within the pocket and within structure of the offense. More important than anything else that we talk about is those 2 things. And Mac Jones still checks those boxes. So although it doesn't feel like you're going to go all in on a Mac Jones trade like the Niners just did to move up to number 3. And that's why I'd be shocked if it was Mac Jones that they were targeting to trade up all that stuff to go up and get a quarterback like that. Just seems a little bit off. But I do think that we need to stop talking about how it automatically needs to be a mobile guy. That's where the league is going, this, that, the other thing. Accuracy, decision-making from the pocket, still the 2 most important traits, bar none. So I think that that's a big one, too, that we have to discuss. And lastly, Jimmy G.
Wait, I think we have to discuss the guy in the chat who just said I look like Jimmy Garoppolo.
Do you think you look like? I don't think you look like Jimmy.
I didn't think I looked like Jimmy Garoppolo, but I'll take that.
I think if I said ask Jess if you look like Jimmy Garoppolo, she'd laugh in my face.
I'm just gonna take the compliment, and I think everything the chat says is true all the time, obviously. So yeah, I'll take that. Hell yeah. Okay, all right, go ahead, make your point. I just have to point that out. I don't get compliments like that all the time. I have to point that out.
That's fair. All right, so let's put a 3rd round pick on the table for Jimmy G. Are you doing that one? So
that's the Brady pick.
That is the Brady pick.
How interesting would that be?
That'd be tough. I don't know. Okay, so let's put a 4th round pick.
No. I get what you're saying. Look, maybe they trade down to pick up a 3rd. Like it doesn't.
Yeah, they're not going to trade 96 straight up for Jimmy G. So they
always kind of do the last thing we're expecting, right? I will only do it if he restructures his contract.
He's got it.
Right, but like not just to the wire because, and I've said this before. Like maybe like Cam's your backup, but I'm not done a quarterback. Also, let me pull up Garoppolo's contract here. What's the years?
So there's only 1 year left. It's a 25.
Are you sure? I thought it was 2.
It's 1 year. I believe it's 1 year.
No, it's 2.
It's 2 years. Well, the next year must not be much guaranteed or something like that. Maybe
it's a $27 million cap hit next year.
Okay, but
there's only 1.4 million in dead cap. So if you let him go, you save 25 million. But it's the same thing this year. So I just that cap hit's got to come down by more than half because I still need room to operate. You know, I got to go into free agency next year, maybe add another wide receiver. I don't know what the deal is at tackle, and both the tackles are on 1 year deals, and maybe that gets solved in the draft. But I'm restructuring that deal big time. Garoppolo, if he's coming to New England, he's getting out of a bad situation, a place he doesn't want to be, a team that doesn't want him. Right? If I'm Bill Belichick, I'm coming into this as I am saving you, Jimmy. I am saving you from Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers. You will take my contract if you want to get on this life raft and rescue your career. Like, that's what I'm doing if I'm Belichick. That cap hit's getting down to about $10 million, if I'm Bill Belichick.
So that's the problem for Jimmy G is, and again, like I said at the beginning of the stream, Jimmy G wants out of San Francisco. I actually really
don't blame him.
So, and I don't blame him either. And it came before this trade up to number 3. And I think this is just going to solidify it. He has already felt like the Niners have given up on him, right? He's already felt like he's not their guy. He's not in their plans long term, and they have given up on him as a quarterback. So I feel like is going to want out of San Francisco here really shortly, if not already. He's probably already on the phone with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan right now saying, trade me. The problem is that nobody wants that contract. Nobody does, and nobody can fit that contract under the cap. So really the only choice that Jimmy G has at this point, I think, is doing what Marcus Mariota just did with the Raiders, where he restructures his deal, lowers his cap number. He has that no trade clause already built in, and you make yourself easier to trade, right? Because you want to get out of there. It doesn't sound like the Niners are just going to cut him, but I think that he wants out. They aren't looking at him as a long-term answer. So I think that they need to restructure his deal now and make him more tradable. And I think that then we can get into the conversation. The other thing is a lot of people in the chat have also mentioned that Jimmy G sucks and all this kind of stuff. Jimmy G's always hurt, all right? But when he's not hurt, he's a good quarterback. Is he a great quarterback? No. But he's an average, above average NFL quarterback that has a winning record around a good team and all that kind of stuff. I think this notion that
this is where, and by the way,
is a little strong.
And that's where Cam Newton comes in.
Right.
Because if you only need 4 or 5 good games from Cam Newton, he can give you that. Cam Newton is, for all we've said about him, might be the best backup quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
He's definitely in the top 3. So that's where, if you have Garoppolo, we've talked about needing to have a strong backup. That would be Cam. I understand. When we went into this, when we started this offseason, the 2 names I said I didn't want to talk about, Cam Newton and Jimmy Garoppolo. And then Jared Stidham was the third.
Right.
And there's a real chance that's going to be their quarterback room.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
here we are. But yeah, Garoppolo with this offense, I've been talking about this for 2 years now. I think the model to build after is not the Kansas City Chiefs, because there's just, you can't do that.
Right.
You can't just, because it all hinges on Mahomes, and you can't just go get Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
The model to build on is San Francisco and Tennessee, and those teams that are just talented up and down the roster, 1 to 53, and the net neutral quarterback who's not going to win you games, but he's not going to lose you games. You let the other guys on your roster go win you games. The Patriots, with the signing the 2 tight ends and the additions they've made on defense, they're now built a lot like that San Francisco team. Yeah. Garoppolo can be your net neutral, and we know he can get that sort of team to the Super Bowl, because not only did he do it, he did it going through Aaron Rodgers, and he did it going through Russell Wilson. Yeah. So I'm not like over the top about Garoppolo. I was hoping this offseason was going to end with Trey Lance or Mac Jones, but there's a lot, like, if they end up with Garoppolo, they are a lot better off at quarterback week 1, 2021 than they were in 2020.
Yeah, I agree. And Jimmy, that's the big thing. If he can stay on the field, when he was on the field in 2019, he had a very good season for the 49ers. Was a lot of that the scheme? Was a lot of that George Kittle and Deebo Samuel and the playmakers? Absolutely. But the point is that his production was good. His tape was pretty good. And the things that he does well, getting the ball out quickly, beating the blitz, throwing to the middle of the field on time with precision and accuracy and anticipation, these are why the Patriots liked him in the draft. This is why the Patriots drafted him in the 2nd round, which is still, to date, the highest Bill Belichick has ever drafted a quarterback as the head coach of the Patriots. So there's reasons why the Patriots have loved Jimmy Garoppolo in the past. And I just think that this notion that he is now trash because he's always injured. He's not trash, right?
Well, you can tie those in. You could not be excited about Garoppolo as your quarterback because you're worried about the injury.
I'm just saying, when he is on the field, he is not a trash quarterback.
Just, you got to separate. You do have to separate those two. And the injuries are absolutely concerned. But look, that's, I think, a large reason of what's driving him out of San Francisco. Yeah. Again, they got to the Super Bowl with him 2 years ago. When you have, even if you're picking in the top 3, drafting quarterbacks incredibly risky. But so is trusting Garoppolo to stay healthy. So this is the risk San Francisco would rather take. I agree. I think it's the better risk, but there's inherent risk here. It is what it is. If Garoppolo wouldn't be available if he could stay healthy. If he could stay healthy, Niners wouldn't be trading up here. The Niners probably would have been back, deep in the playoffs last year. So
right. So it's a really interesting domino effect here. None of this actually has anything to do directly with the Patriots, yet here we are talking about it. Yet none of it directly has to do with the Patriots yet. And here we can talk about a million different ways that it affects the Patriots. So that certainly tells you a lot about how this went down today. Again, the 49ers moving up to number 3, the Dolphins moving around the board and ending at number 6. So that's the new draft order. The Patriots still back at number 15, looking for that quarterback. Is it going to be Jimmy G? Are they going to make a trade up in the draft? Are they going to just stay put with Cam Newton and punt this to 2022? Maybe that makes a little bit more sense after today. Yeah, your guy, Phil Dracovic.
Well, so let me point out one more thing here, too. Yeah. And this doesn't mean a ton, but I'm just going to point it out. Carm Priscillo was at Christian Darrisaw's pro day today.
I love that.
Christian Darrisaw is projected right now, like the consensus. There's this website, NFLmockdraft.com. They do a great job. And one of the things I love that they have, it's a consensus mock draft. So they compile mock drafts from all over, all the different markets, national, and you can see basically what the consensus is. And it generally lines up pretty well. Guess who's the consensus 15th overall pick in the draft, Evan, right now?
Christian Darrisaw.
That's Christian Darrisaw. He might not be the consensus 15th pick. I think he's the consensus 15th on the big board. They're a little different. But the Patriots need a long-term tackle, especially if you're going to go with Garoppolo and a guy who often gets hurt. And now the path has been kind of cleared where they don't have other options. Oh, actually, Mac Jones is the consensus 15 right now. But Darrisaw is consensus 15th on the big board.
So Darrisaw is a great player. I mean, he's definitely got the feet. He's got the athleticism, but he's also big. He's got the size. He checks every ideal tackle measurable box. You draft a guy like Christian Darrisaw, he's your starting left tackle if he can stay healthy, which there's no question to believe he won't stay healthy for the next 5 to 10 years, right? He's that type of player that you're saying, all right, we're going to plug this guy in. He's going to be our starting tackle for a very, very long time. And that's I think what you like about a guy like that. Rashawn Slater is also another really good tackle prospect if that's what the Patriots are thinking about.
He probably goes a little higher though, right?
I would think so, but with all the way the quarterbacks are flying off the board, I don't know where anybody's going to go anymore. You know what I mean?
But I'm saying he probably goes before. Oh, so I get what you're saying. So if they're both on the board,
yeah, I don't know where these tackles are going to end up because the quarterbacks, Kyle Pitts, some of the defensive players, there's a lot of guys moving up. Certainly, there's other defensive players that we could discuss with the Patriots as well. Parsons, J.C. Horn, guys like that too. So a lot of scenarios where I actually like the player that they end up with 15, even if they just stay put and don't end up trading up for a quarterback. That's not the exciting way to go. Obviously, we wish that they would make the big move and move back up to draft a QB, but it seems like after today that got a whole lot harder and just a whole lot unrealistic, unlikely, right? With how much they have to give up to do it. And it just doesn't feel like a trade the Patriots would like to make, to give up that many picks like San Francisco did to make that big jump up. So I think we're both I would say we're both no on Jimmy G, honestly. I just wanted to clear the air about certain things.
No, I think he has to be the answer. If it's not him, then then you're running it back with Cam and Stidham. I think at this point.
So you would rather give up something for Jimmy G and get him in the building than just roll with Cam. Like, I think that's the last question I wanted to present was, do we feel like Jimmy G is a clear upgrade over Cam Newton, that you're giving up capital to get him in the building?
Yes, I think he's the upgrade. Again, I'm not giving up 15 for Jimmy. If it gets to that point, sorry about that. I'm not giving up 15 for Jimmy. If he gets to that point, I guess I'm just rolling with Cam. Or maybe I'm taking Kyle Trask 15. But if it's a day 3 pick, if it's a late third round pick, yeah, I'm getting Garoppolo in the building because at the end of the day, you can manage down his turnovers. And that's ultimately what it's going to come down to this year for the Patriots at the quarterback position, who's not turning the ball over. And look, neither guy's great with turnovers. They both turn the ball over a ton, but I think Garoppolo's are just easier to cut down on based on the way he plays.
It's really close, honestly, because Cam brings so much with his legs that you have to factor in, and you do hope the year removed from COVID, the second year in the system, that certain things with his timing and his mechanics will improve. But I actually think that Cam versus Jimmy G right now is really, really close, especially when you.
Well, so that's the thing. I would at least like a chance to see them head to head, and at least give me the competition. And at least then, if one struggles, you have the other. So I don't know if when I say that, I don't know if I'm locking in Jimmy Garoppolo as my plan over Cam Newton. More so I'm eliminating Jarrett Stidham as plan B. Yeah. That's why I want to get Garoppolo in the building. Eliminate Jarrett Stidham as plan B.
Fair enough. All right. So
can I point out one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a huge Brian Flores fan. I think of all the assistants who've come through Foxborough, if I could pick any of them to take over for Bill, it'd be Brian Flores. How about this draft haul? And I know that the GM too, but he's a part of this. They picked up here this year, pick 6, 18, 36, and 50. Next year, 2 firsts, one of those from a team that will likely have a rookie quarterback. The year after that, 2 firsts. He loaded up the Dolphins. Brian Flores loaded up the Dolphins.
And he did it sort of in spite of the Patriots a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
I
would say that the biggest winners today are the Miami Dolphins in terms of potential. We'll see if they make it work. The Miami Dolphins, and Kyle Trask is a huge winner today because I think he has a real chance to be a top 20 pick now, and there was no chance of that before today.
It's actually crazy. I'm not saying that Brian Flores is going out there and purposely trying to hurt the Patriots in ways, but
look, San Francisco called him.
Fair enough. I don't know, but it definitely feels like Brian Flores is he's in the division now, right? The Patriots are a rival. The Patriots are one of their biggest competition, and you're feeling that certainly from his moves down there in Miami. All right, so we wanted to break in with this emergency pod. I'm glad we did it, and we're able to discuss all these options. Basically, the Patriots are worse off after today. I think we can both agree there in terms of their positioning with getting up and drafting a quarterback, or even I think trading for Jimmy G is not a great option either. So they're kind of in a bad spot, or worse spot. I don't want to call it a bad spot because they still had a great offseason. So in a worse spot than they were before today, certainly, but it doesn't mean that they can't still make move up for a quarterback, maybe Mac Jones or Trey Lance or Justin Fields, whichever one doesn't go to the San Francisco 49ers at number 3. It's still going to be on the board for the Patriots to move up in the draft. We can still discuss that as we move forward. We'll obviously continue to monitor the Jimmy G situation as well. But Alex and I will be back on Tuesday with our regular edition of the podcast.
Unless something happens Monday.
And assuming there's no breaking news that we have to do one of these again. But we will certainly be monitoring everything. If there is big breaking news like there was today, we will jump on and talk to you guys certainly earlier than Tuesday. But if not, we'll definitely be back on Tuesday for our regular podcast. So join us then. And then next Thursday, we're going to do another, I think, live mock draft, right? I think the people really...
Oh, yeah. No, I think we're going to do those every week now from here on out. I think we're going to have some real fun with those.
So right. So we're doing another live mock draft next Thursday. And
no Ian Book. No Ian Book. Keep his name out of the chat. Unless you're saying you don't want Ian Book. No Ian Book.
Certainly we will have the discussions again about where the board's going to fall now. And now Pro Football Focus or whatever mock draft simulator we use will certainly take a quarterback at number 3 to San Francisco. So we can think about that whole shakeup as well. But until then, signing off for Alex Barth, I'm Evan Lazar. Thanks for watching and joining us on this emergency basis, guys. We appreciate it.
Have a good weekend.